Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm just out here today gathering some parts that I got for the engine for my convertible. The last update I did on that, I had the engine in the bed of my truck. So I dropped that off to Bob, and just visually inspecting it, he said the engine was dirty, but we won't know the condition of the engine until it comes back from the hot tank. So he doesn't do the hot tank there at his shop. He knows somebody up in Delaware that does it, so I should know something this week. As soon as the engine gets back from the machine shop. But today I'm just gathering some random parts for the engine. I got the heads over here, so I want to dig them out. He acted like we wasn't going to use them heads. As I originally asked him when I dropped it off, I said, what kind of power you think we could get out of that? And he said they was fine when they was new. They was good engines. Uh, but he said the 265 never really had any pistons that was worth a crap if you was trying to make any kind of power. So what he's wanting to do when the block's at the hot tank, that guy is going to sonic test the cylinder walls and see how far we can safely take take the bore on that block. And I've read a lot of forums and things like that of the older racers when them cars was new, they would bore that block out 125 thousandths over. So we might try to do that to that engine, depending on what the sonic test says about the cylinder walls. Because one forum I was reading, the guy said that maybe in 1957, a friend of his that worked at the gas station had a 55 two-door hardtop that had the 265 in it, and they took that motor apart and they bored it 125 thousandths over. And he said, that was a strong engine, but shortly after they got it running and was driving it and things like that, I think he said one of the cylinders got a crack in it because it was so close to the water jacket. And that motor had just a lot of crappy looking rust, or Bob seemed to think it was just old antifreeze and water mix in the water passages. And what I read on them forums is that sometimes that sonic test can't account for how the pitting is on the inside of the cooling system. So we're going to try, depending on how it works out. If it only goes, definitely, he said the motor's going to need bore, definitely, because it had a ridge at the top of the cylinders. So definitely 30 over if we don't try to. See, the advantage of punching it out 125 thousandths over is you can run 283 pistons in that block. And not only that, you raise your cubic inch of that motor, that engine's going to be a lot stronger. But if you can run 283 pistons, there's a lot more options out there versus a standard 265 bore or a 30 over 265 bore. So what we was talking about on that motor, if we can take it on the engine, if we could take it 125 thousandths over. And one guy said you can do that, but just to sleeve all the cylinders with brand new sleeves, and then you could safely take it 125 thousandths over. And like I said, the main advantage is to be able to run some decent pistons with some decent compression in that engine. And not to make it a race car by any means, but it would be neat to take that original 1955 block and try to get 250, 300 horsepower out of that thing. So we just got to wait for the engine block to come back to see exactly what we can do as far as bore wise, and to make sure that the block itself doesn't have any cracks on the block itself. But you know, Bob, he was one of the original guys that raced some motors back when they was brand new. I mean, he rebuilt his first engine in 1957, so it's quite a treat to go out there and talk to him and listen to his stories about, you know, just how drag racing evolved from the 50s through the 60s. He's a real piece of drag racing history, and I was trying to tell him, man, you need to write a book, or you need to do something so all your knowledge and all your history can live on forever. Because he's 80 years old now, and I try to talk to him, you know, when I call him and I need him to do an engine, I try to sweeten him up a little bit. He still loves doing it, but he is getting old to where he only does what he wants to do anymore, and that's fine. But I'm going to try to talk to him. If you guys looked at my community page, I had put a picture up of a ZL1 engine, a real deal 1969, a genuine 1969 ZL1 427, an aluminum big block. And he told me he picked that motor up in the early 70s at the Lima swap meet, and it was just the block. And he's been slowly gathering parts for it. And he used to race that engine in the late 90s at National Trails. The fastest that motor went was 840s in a quarter mile. And he said he was shifting it at like 8,000 RPMs. But it's never been blown up. It's got the original sleeves in it. I mean, if you guys look at my community page, that's a real sweet engine. And he's also got it's a 1966 427. I mean, it's a real wide motor. It's a 427 Cammer. And he said that them was like built for the Ford Racing division. They was never intended for regular production cars. So he has one of them also. But you just don't see that kind of a shop anymore that has so much old, cool stuff. And he said, you know, there's not a lot of it around, which we all know this, but he said there's not a lot of it around because it's all been blown up. It's all been raced to death through the years. So anything that did exist, it's pretty expensive, but he's got quite a bit of it. I'm gonna pull the heads out because I don't think we're gonna be using these heads on that engine. I don't know what all is in here. It was on top of that on the heads, but 1955 V8 Power Pack hardware, so that sounds cool. Yeah, it's just a bunch of head bolts and just random stuff for that engine. So I'm definitely going to need that. But I'm just trying to get myself organized because my goal on this car is to have it running and things like that by spring or late summer. And I got to do the brakes. I got to do all fuel lines, a new fuel tank. The front A-arms, they need rebuilt. The bushings in them. It needs a lot of work. But this is one of the original heads off that motor. And it's dropping more rust, but I'll bring the camera over here in 1 second. But I mean, you can see there was a lot of moisture, a lot of something getting in them cylinder walls because the heads are they're probably not any good anyways, the way they look. But that's fine. But this is the main reason why I'm concerned with that block itself, just because I don't know if the car sat with no hood on it or something happened where there was moisture or condensation getting in that engine. See, and here's the other cylinder head off of that engine. But I mean, they're toast. And not only that, they don't make hardly any power either. So I don't think we'll be using them. What Bob was wanting to do, if we can bore that engine out, or if we do decide to sleeve all 8 cylinders and bore that motor out, he said to put a 10-to-1 piston in it, a 10-to-1 flat top piston in it, and he said to put small valve camel hump heads on that motor with a 194 160 exhaust valve in it. He said you can't run the 202s because the valve will try to hit the side of the block on a 202. The valve is too far over. So he said we'll try to run a 194 160 camel hump head on it. And I told him, well, if we're going to go that route, one guy had mentioned the old 50s solid lifter camshaft. It was I think it was a 097 was like the short abbreviation for that. But it's one of the early Duntov camshafts. So if we can pull this off and take that block, bring the block back from the machine shop, and the block is a good buildable block, whether we have to sleeve it or not, bore the block 125 thousandths over and put small valve camel hump heads on that thing with the early Duntov camshaft, the solid lift camshaft in it, and get the Corvette valve covers like a mid-60s Corvette small block would have had, the fin valve covers that said Corvette on them. Get them, and then the icing on the cake of what I would like to do to this engine is find me a 1956 or a 1957 Corvette factory aluminum intake. They had dual 4 barrels on it, and put that intake on there with 2 4s, and just have 300 horsepower with a 4-speed behind it. I mean, I think that would be a really, really, really cool engine. So that's kind of where my mind's going. And originally when I went into this, I was fine with just a stock. It's a stock 265 rebuild, But them engines, if anybody that's ever had a 265 will tell you, they're good running engines, but in stock form, especially with a power glide behind them, I mean, you can go from half pedal to full throttle and barely notice any difference in performance in them things. It's kind of like it's got to like wind up. It's like there's no real hard difference in the acceleration of them, which I'm okay with that on this car. But at the end of the day, guys, life's short. We only live once, and Bob Beach rebuilt the motor in this, and when I took it to him, he was so surprised at the engine in that car, because that engine was never put into a regular car. I think that was a crate engine that was in that car, but he had told me that that engine showed like it had no miles on it at all, no ridge at the top of the cylinder. Like, that's still a standard bore LS6 block. And it was a real fun experience with me and Bob doing that engine. And that's the first engine I had him do, the 454 that's in this 55 Nomad. And that motor turned out really good. And one of the reasons why there's a lot of engine builders around, but growing up, my dad, a lot of his buddies would stop by our house, and if they had anything that was souped up or a big engine, it had a Bob Beach engine in it. And I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and one of my dad's buddies come over in a tubbed out 55 Chevy 2-door hardtop. The guy's his last name was either Blackwell or something like that, Brent. Well, he had that 55 in the, I'd say probably the late 80s, and it had a Bob Beach big block in it. And they used to go over on the west side of Columbus, and they would race. And he was bragging about how he was able to beat the little motorcycles, the Ninjas, when they first come out. He was able to beat one of them with that 55. And as he was leaving, he was like, my dad's name was Don also. He said, I'll see you guys later, and he just goosed it, and it just dangled the front wheels maybe about 3 inches off the ground, and he just kept on driving. So for me, that memory is etched into my mind. So when I think about having an engine rebuilt and that same guy's still alive and he wants to, do what he wants to do with this engine, let's see what happens. I'm ready for it. So anyways, that's our goal. The engine should be back sometime from the hot tank this week. So then we'll know what the shape is of the block, and then we'll start proceeding forward. But if you think about it, guys, a 265 punched out to a 283 with small valve camel hump heads on it, and an early dual 4 aluminum intake with the fin valve covers and a 4-speed behind it. And the 4-speed I want to run in this is, they only come in a 1980 or an 81 Z28. The Corvettes and the Trans Ams might have them also, or might have had them also. But I know for sure certain 1980 and I think all 1981 Z28s, it was a 4-speed. They had a Borg Warner Super T10 in them. And if you look at the front shaft on the transmission, it's got 6 rings on the front shaft. And that's like an extra wide ratio transmission. But the reason that transmission is the one I'm going to go with is because it doesn't take a lot of horsepower to make you feel like your car will fly. It's got a 342 first gear. So if I can get 250 to 300 horsepower out of that 265 with that Super T10 behind it and like a 336 gear, this car right here will be an absolute blast to drive. So that's where my goals are going on that. And hopefully it all works out. So I'm just trying to get parts together today. Stuff that, like the bolts and things like that. And then, I got these old boxes. This was an NOS accessory box. And this had the front bumper guard, the front overriders in it for a 55 Chevy. Let me see if I could show you guys what that says there. General Motors Parts Division, and it says Mankey Brothers, Amity, Pennsylvania, Williamsburg, Pittsburgh. So that's where they was headed to. But I always kept the box because the box was cool, but it has all the original hardware in it for the front overriders. So little things like this, I mean, I've had them forever, and I'm sure somebody out there needs this stuff. And I don't know why I had the overriders. I don't know why I wouldn't have. If I sold them, I don't know why I would have kept all this hardware to them, because I've got everything. I mean, weird little brackets like this. But it's just time for me to go through this garage because I have so many parts that I don't have all the cars for them no more, I'll sell a car and somehow I'll have some pieces left over. But I probably will keep the box. The box is sweet. Although it's tore up, it's pretty sweet. That's how you would have got your stuff if you'd have bought it from the GM dealership, after the fact. So that's my update for today, guys. Like I said, I'm probably not going to use these heads. Just getting some of the stuff. Let me pull you off of this and we'll look at these heads a little bit. But I mean, you could see it was getting some type of moisture down in that cylinder. And then the water jackets, see, the block looked a lot like that. And then this one's even rustier. Like maybe some water got in through the intake. But I mean, these are just real small exhaust ports, small intake ports. You could see it was getting some water or some debris on there. But like I said, I don't even think we're going to use these heads. These are the stock heads that was on that motor. And here's all the hardware that I just pulled out of that box. You know, there's somebody out in this world looking for this stuff. And it looks like I got the majority of the hardware. Even some brand new bumper bolts. That's stainless steel on top of that. They built this stuff with quality back then. So, but there's your update, guys. I'm excited about the engine. I hope the block is buildable, and then we'll do what we have to do to build what we want out of that engine. I had everything. I had the whole complete motor with the 4-barrel intake and everything to put it back bone stock. But I'm thinking if I could do it, especially with Bob's blessing, you know, with his thoughts behind it, try to make that thing 250 horse or even more with the 4-speed behind it. I mean, after all, this one's got disc brakes on the front. All the rest of them's got drum. But tell me what you guys think. A 265 punched 125 thousandths over. It gives you a 3 7/8 inch bore. And that's what a 283 is. And the 265 and the 283, they both have the same crankshaft. So boom, we'll make that 265 actually a 283. Small valve camel hump heads, fin valve covers, the old school 56 or 57 aluminum dual 4-barrel intake with the 2 little chrome Corvette air cleaners on it. Super T10 4-speed and 336 gears in the back. This car will actually fly down the road. And you know, be a lot of fun doing it too, whether the top's up or the top's down. So there's your guys' update for the day. Once I find out a little bit more about the engine, once it gets back from the hot tank, everybody, I need you to keep your fingers crossed. But once it comes back to the hot tank, let's hope it's good, the block itself. And then the good times are going to begin. We're going to start seeing what kind of power we can make out of that engine. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys are enjoying your day, and I will catch you guys on the next video.